Bit niya naman eh. Kasi yung hilang-hilang.
Good morning, it's Thursday, the 25th of June. You're watching Euronews, and this is Europe Today. Welcome to the program, I'm Stefan Grobe. Coming up, rebuilding Ukraine. Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko leads Kiev's delegation to the Ukraine Recovery Conference 2026 in Gdansk that kicks off today. Ukraine aims to secure concrete agreements on defense capabilities, energy, and economic cooperation. The conference, co-hosted by Poland and Ukraine, is expected to focus on reconstruction, investment, and sectors heavily damaged by Russia's war. Adventures in Antibes. France's President Emmanuel Macron welcomes Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni to the French Riviera today for a major Franco-Italian summit aimed at strengthening cooperation between two of the European Union's leading economies. According to the Élysée Palace, talks will focus on key areas including defense, space, energy, and infrastructure. Meeting Monsieur Brexit. In an exclusive interview with Euronews' Maria Tadeo, the former French Prime Minister and chief EU Brexit negotiator shares his thoughts about Brexit 10 years on, the danger of populism, and why a victory of the far right in France's presidential election next year would be dramatic. And what happened at the World Cup last night? I'll have the latest for you. But first, the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Poland. The meeting comes as Kiev continues to repair and defend critical infrastructure damaged by unabated Russian missile and drone attacks. Understandably, energy resilience remains one of Kiev's top priorities as Moscow continues targeting power generation and transmission systems. The Gdansk conference is overshadowed by sharply deteriorating relations between the two host countries over historical grievances going back to World War II. For more on this, I'm joined by our correspondent Marcelina Burgetz, who is on her way to the conference in Gdansk. Good morning, Marcelina. So, is there a risk that the Polish-Ukrainian row can derail the conference and play into Moscow's hands?
The conference is going as planned. So far, there is no information on any protest. Russian politics want to use this diplomatic conflict and push their propaganda. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev posted some disrespectful posts about Zelensky as Moscow continues to fuel hate speech. But European politicians widely notice and responsibly highlight that good relations are in the all continent's interest.
And can we still expect Polish and Ukrainian politicians to hold talks in Gdansk?
It's likely, but it won't be the presidents, as neither of them will be present in Gdansk. Zelensky cancelled his presence. After that, also Olena Zelenska and Andriy Sybiha cancelled their visit. Ukrainian Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko will appear on Zelensky's behalf, and the Polish government will be represented by Donald Tusk. Only Russia and Putin can gain from the Polish-Ukrainian conflict, according to European Union representatives who will also be present at the conference in Poland.
So what's going to happen exactly in Gdansk, and why is it important for Poland and Ukraine to resolve their conflict?
It is estimated that nearly 200 contracts and agreements will be signed, mostly between Polish and Ukrainian companies, and the cost of rebuilding Ukraine is estimated at several $100 billion. It is in both Poland and Ukraine's interest to maintain good relations and de-escalate this diplomatic conflict.
All right, Marcelina Borgetz, thank you very much. The situation in Ukraine was also the subject of a meeting of the so-called E5 in Berlin yesterday. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz hosted his counterparts from France, Britain, Italy and Poland to discuss military support for Ukraine and possible diplomatic ways to find an end to the war. Over the past few weeks, Ukraine has launched attacks against Russian positions in Crimea, the Ukrainian peninsula that Russia annexed in 2014. Ukraine said it struck a railway bridge, a power plant, and other infrastructure targets in Crimea, weakening logistics routes to supply Russian troops. For more on this, we have our correspondent Sasha Vakulina here on the set. Good morning, Sasha.
Morning, Stefan.
So, Kiev has significantly intensified its attacks on Crimea. What is the strategy and what's the end game here?
The strategy for Ukraine is to cut Crimea off Russian control and Russian ground lines of communication. Now, we have to take a look at Crimea and its very, very complex geographic position. It is both strategically important but very complicated. Now, let's take a look at the map. Now, Crimea is sitting between mainland Ukraine, Russia, and the wider Black Sea region. In the north, Crimea is tied to Moscow-occupied southern territories of Ukraine by a very narrow land corridor and also this web of roads and rail lines. And you can see some of them on the map. And these are exactly the road and rail lines that Ukraine has been targeting in this case, trying to not allow any supplies by Russian military command towards the forces in Crimea. Because, of course, first and foremost, the peninsula has been turned into a massive military base. Now, at this stage, only Kerch remains the link to Russia. This is, of course, the Kerch Bridge, which was illegally built after the annexation of Crimea in 2014.
I mean, the question, of course, is why are they doing this now, the focus on Crimea, and why is that important?
Ukraine is capable of doing it now thanks to the improved mid-range capabilities. Mid-range goes between 20 to 200 kilometers, strikes mostly with drones. Why Ukraine is doing it? To stop the supplies for the Russian forces in Crimea. It will also take longer, obviously, for Ukraine to take Crimea back, which is the end game here for Moscow. For Kyiv, for Moscow, the end game is not to let it go. This is the territory, this is the trophy for Vladimir Putin. This is the territory he would let go last. But these attacks and this campaign gives Ukraine a very strong argument when it comes to forcing Moscow and Putin personally into the talks with Zelensky.
All right, Sasha Vakulina, thank you very much. The Middle East may be entering a new diplomatic phase, but the road to peace remains deeply uncertain. In Lebanon, a fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah is under growing strain, with disagreements over Israel's military presence in the south threatening to reignite tensions. At the same time, Washington and Tehran are attempting to transform a temporary truce into a broader agreement that could reshape the region's security architecture. So, can the current negotiations deliver lasting stability? And what does that mean for Israel's security? Let's discuss this with Eilon Levy, a former Israeli government spokesman who joins us from Tel Aviv. Good morning, sir. So if Washington reaches a broader understanding with Tehran, would Israel view that as an opportunity to reduce regional tensions? Or is there a fear that Iran is just trying to buy time and preserve its influence across the Middle East?
The Iranian regime is trying to rebuild its network of proxy armies in the Middle East right now, and that's why Israel is warning that the direct US-Iran talks threaten to derail the fragile peace process between Israel and Lebanon itself. Israel's ambassador to the US this week warning we're heading for a train wreck. Israel and Lebanon were already negotiating directly as two sovereign states. They had already agreed that any ceasefire would be contingent on a complete cessation of Hezbollah fire and Hezbollah's withdrawal north of the Litani River. And the Islamic Republic of Iran swooping in now, trying to be a protector of Lebanon, playing a role the Lebanese government does not want because it wants to get rid of the Iranian influence, is throwing a spanner in the works. And so this is a very dangerous development now. There had been a direct peace process between the sides. That is now being derailed as Lebanon is looking at the United States and begging them, please don't sell us back to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. We want to be free from Iranian influence, not let them dictate terms here.
For years, Israel has argued that Iran and its network of proxies are the main source of instability in the region. Are we now witnessing the beginning of a new regional order, or do you believe the fundamental security threats facing Israel remain unchanged?
The Iranian axis is far weaker than it was on the eve of Hamas's October 7th massacre and the regional war that it sparked. But the Iranian regime is trying to rebuild that. And if this war ends with an American withdrawal from the region, if it allows the Iranians to charge tolls on the Strait of Hormuz, if it lets them rebuild their ballistic missiles, then Gulf countries that were thinking of making peace with Israel are going to be looking over their shoulders and trying to reach accommodations with the Iranian regime. That is the threat at this current moment, that instead of intensifying a positive peace process between Israel and its Arab neighbors, they're now going to be spooked by a resurgent Islamic Republic of Iran, and they're going to want to cut deals to continue to appease it in the hope that in the future it won't attack them with drones and missiles like it did during Operation Epic Fury.
And Elon, on Lebanon, one more. Israel says it must maintain freedom of action against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, but critics warn that continued military operations risk destabilizing the ceasefire. How can Israel guarantee its security without pushing Lebanon back towards conflict?
Israel wants Lebanon to dismantle Hezbollah itself, but the Lebanese government has been either unable or unwilling to do so. The previous war ended in November 2024 with a ceasefire that was meant to see Lebanon pull Hezbollah north of the Litani River. That just never happened. Hezbollah continued rearming. And so Israel's defensive campaign against Hezbollah now is creating the urgency and the opportunity for the Lebanese government to do something that it's been desperately trying not to do, and that is to directly confront the militia that takes its orders from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And the day that Lebanon is able to dismantle Hezbollah will be the first day of a beautiful peace between Israel and Lebanon.
All right, Eilon Levy, former Israeli government spokesman. Thank you very much, sir, for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Now, back to Europe. After years of tensions, diplomatic spats, and political differences, France and Italy are seeking a reset. French President Emmanuel Macron and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni are holding their first official bilateral summit in Antibes today, aiming to inject fresh momentum into one of Europe's most important relationships. From migration and defense to competitiveness and the wars on Europe's doorstep, the meeting is designed to show that Paris and Rome can put past disagreements aside and work together. For more on this, let's head to Gabriele Barbati in Rome. Good morning, Gabriele.
Good morning, Stefan. Yes, as you said, this meeting in Antibes is an intergovernmental one by the two countries set 4 years ago to strengthen cooperation on major topics on the agenda, and crucially major contractors, defense contractors, will be at the table. Now, looking at the calendar, Macron hosted Meloni just 10 days ago in Evian. Yesterday both were in Berlin for the E5, and in a few days all the leaders will head to Ankara for the NATO summit. These seem critical days for shaping the future of European defense and to set the relationships and to reset maybe the relationships with the USA, both political and military ones under NATO.
As you said, there are plenty of issues on the table, but France and Italy aren't always exactly on the same page, are they?
Well, Meloni and Macron over the last 4 years have met several times, but not always agreed on the major issues at stake. Take Ukraine. The French president often proposed the military deployment in Ukraine that the Italian prime minister never welcomed. The ground seems firmer on Lebanon. Meloni confirmed that Italy and France will discuss today and will work together to renew the mandate of the UN UNIFIL mission in Lebanon, which will end in December. But underneath it all, there is the role that Meloni has been trying to carve out for herself as a bridge between Brussels and Washington, thanks to her ties with Donald Trump. Well, that leverage seems to have evaporated, as Paris has always been pursuing an independent line with Berlin and London keeping Italy out, and also because of Italy's own domestic vulnerabilities.
All right, Gabriele Barbatti in Rome. Thank you very much for that update. He has been called Monsieur Brexit for spending 4 years as the European Union's chief negotiator in the divorce talks with Britain. He later returned to frontline French politics as Prime Minister, navigating one of the most fragmented political landscapes in modern France. Earlier, Euronews editor Maria Tadeo caught up with Michel Barnier in Paris, and she started by asking him about how he assesses the Brexit process 10 years on.
Brussels was presented by everybody, the nationalist side, Farage, Johnson, as a kind of scapegoat. Everybody knows that is not the case. A part of the answers, a part of the solutions are in Brussels, but just a part. A large part of the other answers are in London or in the regions.
But there is a reality after Brexit. The idea of exit in the European Union no longer became as popular. We don't hear in France the idea of Frexit. In Italy, the Italexit sort of basically died out. The populism within the EU talks about changing from within, not leaving.
But I don't think that the populists in France, the nationalists from the far right and the far left, have changed their mind. Mrs. Le Pen, when the day of the Brexit, the night of the Brexit, said, "Congratulations to the British people. They had the courage to escape from the European servitude." The right words of Mrs. Le Pen. And I never listened to Mrs. Le Pen or Mr. Bardella saying that they were wrong. So I don't think they changed their mind. These people from the far right and even the far left want to destroy the EU. Huh?
They want to destroy the EU.
They are nationalists. They are nationalists.
So then going into 2027, and this election, this is a crucial election in this country. Financial markets are looking at it already.
Not only for France.
Not only for France. This is a systemic country to the EU and a founding member. How do you see your role in this election? And again, what you said now is they want to destroy the EU. That's a big statement.
My role here in the French National Assembly, where we are today, in the French debate, and as a former Prime Minister, is to work for the unity of the center-right. Because I think that the unity, supporting one single candidate and acting about one single program, is the only way to avoid the incredible duel at the second term of the presidential election between the two candidates from the nationalist side.
Would you say that's an existential threat to France and therefore by the EU, if that is what it comes down to?
I think it would be dramatic for France and for Europe.
Euronews editor Maria Tadeo speaking to Michel Barnier. And now the World Cup with the start of the final match day of the group stage. Football celebrations in Switzerland after their 2-1 victory over Canada. Or as they say there, Hopp Schwyz. The Swiss, the quiet achievers of world football, were the better team for most of a slightly subdued game and finally ended up first in Group B. It's a bittersweet story for Canada, which qualified for the knockout round as the second-place team in its group for the first time, but will now have to schlep to the United States for the privilege. In the second game of Group B, Bosnia-Herzegovina beat Qatar 3-1. Their players celebrated on the pitch, having secured third place. They thought they had done enough to get into the knockout stage. We'll see about that. Then, Brazil advanced to the next round after an unceremonious 3-0 victory over Scotland, finishing first in Group C. Scotland's hopes of advancing to the World Cup knockout stage for the first time took a blow. They might have the nicest supporters, but not the best players. Also in the knockout rounds, Morocco, the semi-finalists from 2022, twice overcame the shock of conceding to Haiti to win a World Cup thriller 4-2. On the other hand, Haiti exited the tournament with their first World Cup goals in 52 years. Then Mexico finished first in Group A after defeating the Czech Republic 3-0, a success that was never in doubt. For the Mexicans, a perfect record for the first time, 3 wins in 3 games. And finally, South Africa beat South Korea 1-0 to book their place in the knockout phase. This victory was South Africa's 3rd ever win in the World Cup and their first against a non-European team. South Korea should have done enough to progress as one of the 8 best third-place teams, but a spot in the next round is not guaranteed. 6 games on the menu tonight and early tomorrow morning, among them Ecuador against Germany, Tunisia versus the Netherlands, and Japan against Sweden. That's it for today. Thanks for joining us this morning. As always, we'd love to hear your feedback, so send us your questions or comments via email to europetoday@euronews.com. For all the latest news of the day, stay tuned to Euronews and euronews.com. I'm Stefan Grobe. Take care and see you tomorrow.
Made in Europe, showcasing big success stories from across the continent.
We develop talents and inspire to businesses.
Discover how European businesses and people are shaping the future.
This is the challenge of our generation.
Because Europe is where ideas and innovation thrive. Want good news for a change?
To make a difference in Europe.
Tune in to Made in Europe on Euronews and euronews.com.